52 million Americans make less than $36,000 a year. Over 50% of Americans only have $500 in their savings account. Is the middle class dead man walking? That's what we want to get into today's video. Let's do it.
Take me back to the nights we felt alive, picking up the pieces on a summer night. I didn't know that I would feel just like my heart's on fire whenever I'm with you, 'cause we go back and
I've always said in my videos that the engine in the car is the Fortune 500 company and the middle class is driving the car. The middle class makes us unique in the world, and I think they're very important to the overall health of the economy. And I've been talking about inflation for over a year because it destroys the middle class. One of the reasons this is happening lately is because Biden has put the boot on the neck of the oil industry. Americans are already facing searing inflation that when gas prices surged to an all-time high earlier this month. Now, some lawmakers want the federal government to offer stimulus payments or rebate checks to help reduce the pain at the pump. I talked about this in the state of California with Gavin Newsom. I think it's a bad idea. Every time there's a problem, let's just keep printing and printing more money. A short-term solution to a long-term problem. So most recently, a reliable market barometer of the risk of future recessions was triggered for a second consecutive day on Friday. This is alarming. The yield on the 2-year Treasury bonds climbed above the yield on the 10-year Treasury bonds. And this is a phenomenon known as the inverted yield curve. The inverted yield curve. The yield curve is regarded as a reliable predictor of recessions, having inverted before each of the last 8 recessions, as measured by the National Bureau of Economic Research. So the yield curve inverted, if you all remember, in 2007, foreshadowing the recession of 2008, 2009, and spookingly inverted in 2019. Clearly, the 2019 inversion was not due to the investors foreseeing the pandemic and the lockdowns that briefly changed the world and threw the economy into a recession in 2020. They say briefly. So, the lead Moody Analytics chief economist, Mark Zandi, warned that even in light of the March jobs report, an economic misstep is a high probability, and the risk of recession is 1 in 3 now at this point. He's worried. I'm very, very worried right now. This is accelerating, and some analysts think an inversion can cause a recession mechanically, perhaps by reducing the willingness of the banks to lend. Others say, hey, an inversion merely reflects, Mercury data that indicates a recession might lie ahead. No big deal. No big deal. Don't worry about it. So we need to talk about bonds. And this, when you look at bonds, bond yields move in the opposite direction of prices. So when the yield on a bond is rising, it indicates that the price of the bond is falling. So if we go to 2022, prices are rising at a far faster rate than most of Americans' paychecks are. So that means the standard of living for many Americans is going down. And we all know it's been going down for a long time. As I indicated, there's a lot of research. The middle class, it's a name that was developed to make people feel good. There really was never a middle class. There was a pauper class, peasant class, and a little more money than that. So it is taking more out of the incomes to pay for essentials, such as, people are paying more for housing, food, and gasoline, and that is leaving a lot less money for other things. And of course, there are many Americans that are going into tremendous amounts of debt. I've talked about this for a while in order to maintain the standard of living that they are currently enjoying. And, by going into debt only brings more pain in the long run. Is it a good idea, ladies and gentlemen, working in the real estate industry, that people do a 40-year mortgage? Because I've been seeing that over the past year. Pulling cash out and doing a 40-year mortgage. You're going deeper into debt. The bank owns your home. So as our lenders have, the leaders have absolutely flooded the system with new money. Those at the very top of the economic food chain have greatly prospered. I'm talking billionaires, multi-billionaires. Once again, inflation is caused by reckless printing. not the supply chain issues. It's the reckless printing of money. It's not the supply chain issues that are causing inflation. Meanwhile, the colossal gap between the ultra wealthy and the rest of us is just growing. The billionaire class, they're poor too. We're taking hits. So today, almost 52 million American workers make less than $15 an hour, and half of Americans, ladies and gentlemen, in the United States of America have $500 in savings. That's it. Is that the sign of a healthy economy, ladies and gentlemen, when half of America only has $500 in their account? 10 more million Americans went into poverty due to COVID-19, and they're still in poverty. You know, the Democrats are trying to boost the national minimum wage. It's stalled. A new report finds that on the average, 1 in 3 U.S. workers is still making less than $15 an hour, while the share of women and people of color earning that amount is even greater. So this is scary. So nearly 52 million U.S. workers, or 32% of the country's workforce, earn less than $15 an hour, according to a report published Tuesday by Oxfam, OXFARM, America. The data helps quantify how many Americans could be impacted by the rise in the Wage Act, which would set a $15 federal hourly minimum and has been pending in Congress since 2021. Hey, let's set it at 20 and destroy some more small businesses. It's a short-term solution to a long-term problem. You know, once upon a time, $15 hour wage was a really good wage. It was, but thanks to inflation, just one aspect, I'm just saying one aspect, the inflation in 2022, you simply cannot live a middle-class lifestyle in the United States on less than $15 an hour. So maybe giving $15 billion to Ukraine, maybe we should have gave $15 billion to our economy and helped out people. Just saying. You know, the Social Security Administration compiles, I looked at this data, extremely detailed information about how much money American workers make each year, and the final numbers for 2021 won't be out for a number of months, but the 2020, we have some data on that, and the median yearly wage in the U.S. was a sad $34,612.04. So another way to look at it, ladies and gentlemen, half of all American workers made more than $34,612, and half of all workers made less than $34,612, and half of America only has $500 in their savings account. Should we be giving money to all these other countries, knowing that our lawmakers know that data? So if you're making less than $34,000 per year, life is certainly not easy for you. When you break that down, that is less than $3,000 a month, and that is before taxes of federal and state are taken out. That isn't a lot of money, ladies and gentlemen. But we have a lot of people living in their bubble. So in the old days, the vast majority of U.S. adults could look forward to owning a nice home. But now housing prices are soaring to absolutely absurd levels. In fact, we just learned that the average price of a new home in the United States just rose above $500K for the first time ever. I like to hear that working in real estate, but it has positive and it has negative effects. And my job is to be a professional and look at both sides of this and do what's best for my clients and myself and not be greedy. So new home sales are still down 6.2% year over year, down year over year for the 9th straight month. I've talked about this, and the average new home sales price topped the $500K. And the primary reasons why new home prices are spiking so dramatically is due to building costs and also investor groups like BlackRock going in and buying tons of homes. I get they see it as a viable asset class, but maybe this needs to be regulated. Federal government's giving them money as well and supporting it. So just about everything that goes into construction is one reason new homes has been insanely expensive, and that isn't going to change anytime soon, ladies and gentlemen. They put the brakes on, and they were going, and they put the brakes on a little bit because costs are just getting out of control. So buying a brand new home is now out of reach of many formerly middle-class Americans, and this has caused the inventory of unsold homes to balloon. Some would say alarming levels. Investors are going in and buying them up, groups. But the inventory of new single-family houses for sale rose to 407,000 houses in February, seasonally adjusted, the largest unsold inventory since 2008, up by 40% from a year ago, and that represents 6.3 months of supply at the current rate of sales, and that's according to data from the Census Bureau, and that was out a few days ago. So, of course, it isn't just housing costs that are soaring to unprecedented heights right now. When we, I've talked about this in the past, and I've done videos on this. The concern is the price of food, and food going up and lack of supply chain. So when you have a first world country like the United States and their supply chains gets messed up, you know what it does to third world countries? These people are going to be starved out, and it is going on. And when you look at the price of food and gasoline, they've been surging. And food shortages, that's the biggest problem no one's talking about, is food shortages. Our lawmakers in Washington realize that U.S. consumers are deeply suffering. And, so some of them want to send another round of stimulus checks. That is a bad idea. It's a short-term solution to a long-term problem. Families with 2 children could get as much as $300 per month as long as the nation's average gas price exceeds $4 a gallon. Why don't you just cut the gas tax in the state of California? And gas never needs to go over $2 a gallon. We have so much gas. I have a guy that I know that works in a refinery. And it's a bill that's proposed by Mike Thompson of California, John Larson of Connecticut, and Lauren Underwood of Illinois. All lawmakers are Democrats are supporting this bill. I see some short-term fixes to it, but it's just not the way to solve the problem. When members of Congress were considering the very first round of stimulus checks all the way back in 2020, I said, and a lot of other people said, it's going to let the genie out of the bottle, and we will never be able to put that thing back in because we're just going to say, especially midterms are coming up, let's just throw some money at the problem. Let's just throw a little money at the problem. Every time there's even a bit of pain or discomfort, we'll just clamor and print more money and give stimulus checks. I think it's a bad idea. But every time our lawmakers borrow and spend money that we do not have, folks, that creates more inflation. It creates more inflation. It's reckless printing of money. We just can't keep flooding the system with more cash. It is complete and utter absolute insanity. And, one economic professor from a prominent institution, if you want to, made a point that he said, Steve Hank said they're flying blind. They don't know what they're doing. And he, an applied economics professor at Johns Hopkins, said it's utter rubbish and it's complete nonsense that the Fed Jerome Powell sees supply chain issues as the root cause for inflation. Thank you. Because before I read this, I knew that. And the Federal Reserve latest official statements on the shape of the economy, it has to do with supply chain issues. That's why inflation's surging. No, maybe it has to do with the reckless printing of money. The money supply in excess causes inflation, and the Federal Reserve appears to be almost clueless to that. They know it. These guys and gals aren't stupid. Inflation is always destructive. It's always destructive. And real inflation right now, folks, and I talked about this, is 15 to 16%. Most of our leaders seem to think that more money is the solution to all our problems. But they are systematically destroying the middle class. And it's by design. And they are systematically destroying the reserve currency of the world. It's by design. So we are literally committing national financial suicide. The only export we have is our currency. And they want to destroy it, and all currencies of the world. And so I don't understand why more Americans are not deeply upset about this. I know everyone's playing video games, watching football, baseball, drinking. But once upon a time, the U.S. had the largest and most prosperous middle class in the history of the world, and what's made us special. And now the middle class is dying, and our politicians seem absolutely determined to speed up the process. So let me tell you what the end game is. This is an accelerated collapse of all currencies worldwide into a programmable currency that will track, control, and trace everything you do and what you're able to spend that money on. That's the end goal. Democratic leaders and Republicans knew how importantly being on the petrodollar, having the US dollar as the world currency, it's our biggest export, is our currency. We would never allow it to happen. Look what happened to Gaddafi when he decided in Libya to go off the dollar. He's no longer around. That's the kind of power we have in the world. It's done by design because we want to bring in a digital and we want to bring people more into a poor class. But this has trickled up to the millionaires. This is affecting people with $100 million less. You can say, oh, I feel sorry, cry me a river. But it's all interchangeable with the middle class, the millionaire class. But the guys and gals that are really cranking, going to make a ton of cash when you have 5, 10, $100 billion in the bank. And we know who those folks are. So they want this. But this is just bad. We when you have 50% of Americans that have $500 in your account, as a lawmaker, and you go, is that a healthy economy? Should we be exporting all our money to Ukraine? Ukraine fighting Russia. We have 10 more million Americans in poverty. We have fentanyl coming into this country. 100,000 Americans are dying every year. I mean, I know the reasons why this is happening, but when you look at it holistically, is it good that we give all this money to these countries when our own people in the United States, half of America, how embarrassing for the world. And of course, the more people you have in each of your countries in the United States, the more people make money at the top. But you should all look into the digital currency, the regulation of crypto, looking into it. The government said they're just looking into it with the executive order, but they've been looking into it for years. And the World Economic Forum has been in Dubai doing their conference. I've listened to the whole thing, and I have a friend who's actually at the conference. So I'm getting all the tips, and I'll be doing some maybe talks about it, but it's interesting. But is the middle class dying? I'd like to get your thoughts. But there's a lot of changes going on right now. The big reset. Have a great rest of your weekend, week. And stay focused. Don't drink. Don't smoke. And don't do drugs right now. Take care.